This message is about the Battle of Armageddon, which is a pretty well-known Bible description of a battle, and it's become kind of a metaphor in our normal lives. So what is the Battle of Armageddon, in case you don't know? The word Armageddon has been popularized to mean a great disaster. So in our society, that Armageddon means that. It has the sense of a great disaster, and so much so that it even appears in movies that way. And there's a movie called The Armageddon, which is about a comet striking the Earth, which has nothing at all to do with what the Bible describes. So the word actually comes from the Bible, and it refers to a specific event and place. And Armageddon is the last battle by man against God, and it occurs when Jesus returns. Armageddon is, as a word, is a corruption of the Hebrew word har-megiddo. It came from Hebrew as har-megiddo, and in Greek got turned into Armageddon and came to us as Armageddon. So it's really a plain in Israel. It's a flat area in Israel, in northern Israel, where battles have been fought in the past. And so, although it was once an ideal place for great military battles, it's now far too small for battles the way we do them now. It couldn't be used as a battleground anymore. We have weapons that shoot farther, much greater distances than would cover that whole battleground. So it simply wouldn't be a functional battleground the way we know battles today. So, but a bunch of prophecy interpreters misunderstand this battle in a very fundamental way. And they envision tanks and missiles and aircraft because that's how we would do a battle in our time. And they think in terms of our time being the way things will be. But that's not the spiritual sense that is intended here. And just reading what the Bible says about the Battle of Armageddon, you can't escape the idea that something odd is really going on. A lot of things that are said just don't make sense in terms of battles. And I'll tell you right out that the Battle of Armageddon is not what most people expect. Everybody is thinking about a great tank battle or a great aircraft battle or something like that, but that's not what's coming. And so we'll look at what is odd about it. Revelation says something here that is really very odd, and if you think about it deeply. And so from Revelation 16:12, it says, "And the sixth angel poured his vessel over the great river Euphrates, and its waters dried up, that the way of the kings from the east may be prepared." So what happens here is an angel pours out his vial of plague on the Euphrates River. But the Euphrates dries up, and that doesn't seem like much of a plague. What kind of a plague causes a river to dry up? But that isn't really what's odd. Crossing the Euphrates as a military accomplishment is World War I technology. They could do that in World War I. The Euphrates is nothing as a river to cross. Bigger rivers have been crossed than that. And so, but the verse says the Euphrates must be dried up so the kings can cross it. Why would that be? We have no trouble sending tanks across larger rivers than that. So that's odd. That's very strange. And it's part of this oddness that we're going to be seeing here. And so we ask the question, why must the Euphrates be dry? That seems so strange. Could the world's armies of that time be such a ragtag force that they can't cross the Euphrates? Has the world decayed to such a point where even World War I technology isn't possible? Well, that seems really doubtful. And I'll tell you that it's not correct either. Remember that the other side of the Euphrates is also undefended, which makes the crossing easy. You don't need to make a big effort if there's nobody on the other side shooting back at you as you try to cross. And World War I technology was built on the idea that you would get across a river while somebody was trying to shoot at you. So you'd have to defend what you were doing at the same time as you're attacking. And that's not the case here. There's nobody trying to stop you on the other side of crossing the Euphrates. So we can also see that there's another passage, this one from Isaiah, that talks about this crossing of the Euphrates. And he adds a little bit more information that's going to help us to understand what's going on. And he says, "With a scorching wind, he will sweep his hand over the Euphrates River. He will break it up into 7 streams so that anyone can cross over in sandals." Okay, now that is odd. So what kind of kings can't muster some rowboats to get people across? If they don't even have World War I technology and nobody's on the other side defending it, why can't you just line up some rowboats and cross that way? Instead, it says the river must be dry so if they don't get their shoes wet, their sandals wet. What kind of a battle are we talking about here where people don't want to even get their sandals wet? It makes no sense. It's too strange. And so we'll keep on going on with what Revelation says here. And then these kings know what they're doing. They know that they are going to fight against God. That's what this battle is going to be about. It's going to be man fighting against God. And they're completely aware of what God is doing to them, and that God is causing things to happen. And so from Revelation 16:10 and a little bit of 11, or no, most of 10 and a bit of 11, and the fifth angel poured his vessel over the throne of the beast, and they blasphemed the name of the God of heaven due to their pains and due to their sores. So this is another angel pouring out another vessel of plague on them. And the people get pains and sores as a result of this plague. And what do? They blaspheme the name of the God of heaven. They know who is doing this to them, and they are cranky about it, and they blaspheme him. So these verses come immediately before the Euphrates verse that we looked at earlier. And so we can ask the obvious question here. If someone causes you pain and sores, that's the person you want to fight against. And that's what's happening here. They know that God is doing these things to them, sending these plagues on them, and they are intending to fight against him. So we also see some more from these verses in Revelation about this battle. And so they confirm that the people who are in this battle know that this is a battle against God. And so it says, and I say from the mouth, and I saw from the mouth of the dragon, and from the mouth of the beast, and from the mouth of the false prophet, three foul spirits like frogs, for they are the spirits of demons who perform signs, which go into the kings of the habitable earth to gather them to the war of that great day of God Almighty. So these frogs sent by demons aren't literal frogs. They are, this is all being described in a symbolic way. But these are demons who are powering these kings to gather them to this war. And so that's the purpose. This is Satan's purpose here, to bring them all together here and bring them all together in this great battle against God. And they know that's what they're doing. Satan is driving them to do that. And so they're completely aware of it. So they're planning to have this big battle against God. And so the obvious question is, what kind of weapon do you use to shoot at God? Do you use a missile? Do you use some kind of a fighter plane to fire bullets at him? What do you do? And all of those seem crazy when you think about it. So what kind of a battle is this going to be? We saw that people are crossing the Euphrates in sandals. We see that there's really no weapon we have that we could use to shoot at God. It wouldn't make any sense. And so what's the answer to all of this? We see all of these odd riddle things in here, and it just doesn't make any sense. But there is a way that it makes sense. This is not a battle of tanks and bullets. This is a battle of words and ideas. And that's an expression that we use in our time. There are sometimes battles that aren't physical battles, and this is one of those. So this battle is really a very public, very direct rejection of God by a large number of people. And particularly at issue in this battle is who will be king? Who's going to be in charge of me? And so Jesus actually talked about this. He said this time would come. And Luke 19:14 records that. This is part of a bigger passage, but I'm just trimming it down to this verse here. But the citizens of the city hated him, and they sent envoys after him, and they were saying, "We do not want this man to reign over us." And that's what this battle is about. These are people saying, we don't want God to reign over us. We know he's there. We know he's doing all these things to us. We don't want him to reign over us. So the Battle of Armageddon also ends just as Jesus said in Luke. And that passage says, "But those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me." And that's what happens at the Battle of Armageddon. The people who are fighting against God are destroyed. So summarizing all of this, the Battle of Armageddon is really the universal fight over who will be king of me. Is it going to be me who's going to be the king of me, or is it going to be God who's going to be the king of me? And this, the only difference here is that this is on a larger scale. This is a whole bunch of people at the same time getting together to say, we don't want God to be our king. And so what we saw with the verses, with the sandals and all that sort of stuff, these are common people. They are not kings in the sense of they rule over people. They are kings over themselves, okay? And so they think of themselves as king of their own lives, and they don't see themselves as being a servant of God. And that's the big battle here. They want to continue to be king over themselves. They don't want God to be king over them, just as the passage in Luke said. And so they know they're fighting against God. They're completely conscious of this. They're aware that this is a rejection of God, and they are making it plain in this, maybe it'd be better called as a protest, that they don't want God to be their king. But I don't think they know that Satan is the one who's bringing them here, and I don't think that they know that they're here to be slaughtered, and that is, we know the result of it. But it does make complete sense then that the Euphrates needs to be dry so that it can be traversed by common people in shoes or sandals, and common vehicles of common people can get to here without anything special. It's not a military battle in that sense. It's the common people getting together to say, to battle against God with the words, "We don't want you to be our king."